Consideration of private members' business as listed on today's order paper.
Private members' business, consideration at second reading of Bill C-224, National Framework on Cancers Linked to Firefighting Act, standing in the name of Mrs. Romanado.
Mrs. Romanado, seconded by Mr. Aldag, moves that Bill C-224, an act to establish a national framework for the prevention and treatment of cancers linked to firefighting, be now read a second time and referred to the Standing Committee on Health. Debate. The Honourable Member for Longueuil, Charlemagne.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And before I begin, I'd like to thank the International Association of Firefighters and the Canadian Association of Fire Chiefs. Through their lobbying efforts of parliamentarians, I learned a great deal about the challenges facing firefighters. To my friend, Chris Ross, président de l'Association des pompiers de Montréal, et mon ami.
To my friend Jean-François Couture, a firefighter at the Longueuil Municipality's Fire Safety Service. Jean-François, thank you for sharing your story with me and for making me aware of this important issue.
Speaker, I'm honored to be standing today in this House to speak about my private member's bill, C-224, an act to establish a national framework for the prevention and treatments of cancers linked to firefighting. Firefighters put their lives on the line every day to keep Canadians and our communities safe. But, Mr. Speaker, they also do so when the fire is out. We have a responsibility, all of us, to do everything we can to keep them safe as well. As the daughter of and the wife of volunteer firefighters, this is a responsibility that I take very sincerely. It's very personal and it's very important to me. To my father Dave and to my husband Chris, you're always going to be my heroes.
Yeah.
Mr. Speaker, did you know that over 85% of all duty-related deaths among Canadian firefighters are caused by occupational cancers? Or that a firefighter's cancer diagnosis may or may not be recognized as job-related, depending on where you serve across this great land. In researching my bill, I was shocked to discover this disparity in the number of cancers linked to firefighting recognized across the provinces and the territories. Mr. Speaker, that one province would only recognize 6 cancers and another 19. It makes no sense to me. The Memorial Grant Program for First Responders was established by our government in 2018 to provide compensation to the beneficiaries of first responders, including firefighters, who died as a result of their duties. It defines line-of-duty deaths as any death attributable to and resulting from the performance of official duties, including death resulting from an occupational disease such as cancer. A presumptive list of occupational illnesses and related years of service based on established provincial and territorial practices is established and maintained by Public Safety Canada. As there is no consistency among the provinces as to which cancers are linked to firefighting, the program itself is applied unevenly across the country. Madam Speaker, the research doesn't change when you cross into another province.
That's right.
Exposure to smoke and toxic chemicals make firefighters 4 times more likely to develop cancer than the general population. Exposition à la fumée et aux produits chimiques.
Exposure to smoke and toxic chemicals makes firefighters 4 times more likely to develop cancer than the general population.
And exposures can occur at any stage of firefighting, including knockdown and overhaul, and back at the station through contaminated personal protective equipment or equipment that may be off-gassing or through diesel exhaust. In fact, Madam Speaker, a 2017 study here conducted by the University of Ottawa found traces of chemicals in the urine and blood samples of firefighters after a mere 5 to 10 minutes of exposure of being on scene, and that is with air masks on, where nothing was actually inhaled. And for the female firefighters across Canada, while you may be few, there are only 5 of Canada's 13 provincial and territorial jurisdictions that recognize that cervical and ovarian cancers can be caused by the occupational hazards female firefighters face in the line of duty. Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, and Yukon are the only jurisdictions in Canada that currently recognize women's diseases like cervical and ovarian cancer as linked to firefighting. Nova Scotia announced on March 22nd, 2022, that it too, effective July 1st of this year, would add cervical and ovarian cancer, as well as 11 other cancers, bringing the total of cancers recognized in Nova Scotia to 19, the current maximum in Canada. Bravo, Nova Scotia.
Second that.
And while the number of female firefighters are quite low, Madam Speaker, the risk is just the same. Ill-fitting gear or personal protective equipment may expose women firefighters at a greater risk. How can a cancer diagnosis be considered occupational for a female firefighter in one part of the country and not be for another woman doing the same job and being exposed to the same hazards in another part of the country? In rural Canada, while Canada's major cities employ career firefighters, most rural areas of the country rely on volunteer fire services. The ability to share knowledge, tools, and best practices is essential to helping protect all firefighters from preventable occupational cancers. And while professional fire departments may have state-of-the-art decontamination and gear storage rooms, volunteer fire departments likely don't have those same resources. I'll give you an example. Often, a volunteer firefighter may have to keep their bunker gear with them and respond directly to a fire from their residence. Well, after the fire's out, they may put their bunker gear in their trunk. They've now put that contaminated bunker gear in the trunk of their car where they put the groceries for their family. Not every firefighter knows this, that they are now putting not only themselves but their families at risk of having a contaminated gear in their vehicle. And let me be clear, Madam Speaker, a firefighter is a firefighter is a firefighter.
Very good.
Whether you are a volunteer firefighter, a full-time career firefighter, a firefighter in the Canadian Armed Forces, or Indigenous communities, the risks are all the same. Now imagine, Madam Speaker, if we could share information on best practices, like not storing that bunker gear in your trunk, like washing off with wipes immediately after a fire to get the chemicals off your skin. What if we were able to share the data and the research so all firefighters across Canada knew the risks, but also how to take those necessary precautions? We need to promote awareness, Madam Speaker. We need to promote information sharing, education on best practices for prevention, and recognize that occupational-related cancers in firefighting does exist. And that, Madam Speaker, is why I've introduced Bill C-224. Cancer doesn't discriminate between our provinces and territories, Madam Speaker, and nor should we. Federal and provincial collaboration and information sharing can facilitate this. Bill C-224 would establish a national framework to promote research, information, and knowledge sharing related to the prevention and treatment of cancers linked to firefighting, It would establish national standards to recognize cancers linked to firefighting as occupational diseases. Et il promouvoir l'éducation et la sensibilisation.
Promote education and awareness by designating January as Firefighting-Linked Cancers Awareness Month.
With the International Association of Firefighters, that January would be declared as Cancer Awareness Month in firefighters. Madam Speaker, I've consulted with the International Association of Firefighters Canada, the Canadian Association of Fire Chiefs, l'Association des Pompiers de Montréal. I've had countless local fire departments across the country, as well as members from across the aisle, reach out to me to voice their support for this legislation and its aim of working together across all jurisdictions to improve the health and safety of Canada's firefighters. And I want to personally thank all the firefighters in my hometown who served in the then Greenfield Park Fire Department with my father and my husband, because I know they talk to me all the time about this, et tous mes amis pompiers de service de sécurité incendie.
To all my firefighter friends,
Thank the members from the Conservative Party, the NDP and the Greens who co-seconded my bill, demonstrating that we can together work across party lines for firefighters and their families. Madam Speaker, this is very clear. The purpose of this bill is to save lives. Le but de ce projet de loi.
the purpose of this bill is to save lives.
Madam Speaker, the research is there. We know that cancer in firefighters exists. Why do we need to continue to argue how many when the information is there? Bill C-224 is about increasing awareness. And we're doing that today by debating C-224 and by identifying January as Firefighter Cancer Awareness Month, so that not only firefighters across Canada, but their families and various stakeholders, including the medical community, know that cancer in firefighting is real. We need to share the research and the best practices. As I mentioned, not storing your bunker gear in the trunk, making sure to wash your hood after every fire. Try not to be the dirtiest firefighter coming out of overhaul. And when my husband and my father were in the department, they used to do overhaul without the mask, the SCBA. That's unheard of now. It is so dangerous. We need to prevent cancer and mitigate the risk, Madam Speaker, and we need to provide support to those who need it. Firefighters from the International Association of Firefighters are here in Ottawa today and tomorrow, and they're meeting with parliamentarians to discuss important issues to them. I know that they're watching, so I want to take the opportunity to welcome all the delegates here to Ottawa. Bienvenue à Ottawa, j'espère de vous voir sous peu. And I urge all members to meet with them, to hear their stories. In speaking with firefighters over the years that I've joined this House, this is why C-224 is here. Believe it or not, Madam Speaker, MPs do listen. Madam Speaker, firefighter line of duty deaths caused by cancer may not be as sensational as those caused by fireground accidents. They may not make the same headlines. But, Madam Speaker, the level of sacrifice is just the same. And the firefighter and their family needs to know that the risks, what are those risks? How to mitigate them? What are the best practices, and should they develop an occupational related cancer, that they have the supports that they need. I urge all members in this House to join me and supporting Bill C-224. Together, we can do what's right for our brave men and women in uniform. Thank you. Merci.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires. The honourable member of Caribou Prince George. Is that what it is? Sorry. Kamloops. Oh, sorry. It's Kamloops Thompson Caribou. Sorry, I was recognizing the wrong member.
No, that's okay. Thank you very much, and it's always a pleasure to rise on behalf of the members of Kamloops Thompson Caribou, and I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for her question. This sounds like it's very long overdue. One question I have, and perhaps I'd invite my honourable colleague to elaborate on this. I came from an occupation where post-traumatic stress disorder was something that we really saw in a lot of first responders, and I feel as though this is one step in recognizing the perils that first responders really face. Does she have any ideas of where we may go in the future in terms of helping our first responders who put their lives on the line so that we can live as safely as possible? Thank you.
L'honorable député de Longueuil, Charles Lemoine.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I'm delighted to answer that question. In fact, I was the first member of the government bench to publicly support C-211 from his colleague from, I don't want to mess up, from the BC, Caribou Thompson, I'm sure I'm going to mess up his writing name, in support of C-211. And as many members of this House know, I have two sons that serve in Canadian Armed Forces, and a father and a son, thank you. And now a daughter-in-law in the Canadian Armed Forces, and a husband and a father who served in the fire department. So PTSD has a seat at the table of our House. It's something that we need to support all of those who serve our communities in terms of making sure that not only their physical health is taken care of, but also their mental health. Thank you.
L'honorable député de Jonquière.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. In my colleague's speech, she spoke about the equipment used by firefighters that may be contaminated. And that is something that has been addressed in Quebec. There are already measures in Quebec. Water is used to clean the equipment, and then it is sealed in order to be cleaned more properly. Does that not show that this is an area that should be dealt with by the provinces, and that the provinces are indeed already implementing policies to deal with these concerns? The honourable member for Longueuil, Charles Lemoine. I'd like to thank my colleague for the question. Indeed, the practices that are used in Quebec may not be used elsewhere, and that is the reason for this bill. And we're not just talking about the policies and practices, but we're also looking at the issue of the fact that there are various firefighting-linked cancers. So, for example, in Manitoba, 19 cancers are recognized, whereas elsewhere only 6 are recognized. So we need to work closely. We need to ensure that the 19 cancers that have been supported by research are dealt with.
L'honorable député the honourable member for Vancouver Kingsway.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, I want to congratulate the honourable member on her bill. She has the NDP's enthusiastic support, and we will always be there to support our brave heroes in the firefighting profession in every circumstance. I want to ask her specifically, though, about a particular aspect. Toxic chemicals are commonly used as flame retardants in a wide variety of household products, like upholstered furniture, and they threaten the environment, but more importantly, they affect the human body, causing numerous health problems such as cancer. The past chemicals management plan acknowledged the health risks posed by select chemical flame retardants and banned their manufacture, sale, and import and use. But banning only certain classes opens the door to loopholes, and there's no regulations under the Canada Consumer Product Safety Act for residential upholstered furniture. So my question to her is, does the member support the IAFF's call to work with the Minister of Health towards a complete ban on the sale, manufacturing, import, and use of all chemicals that are used in flame retardants for upholstered furniture, given the toxic effects that they have not just on firefighters, but on all Canadians?
Answer from the member for Longueuil Saint Charles Lemoine.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I thank my colleague for his support and the question. Absolutely, we heard very clearly from the IAFF that the toxic chemicals that are used in flame retardants, especially on, for instance, sofas, is a problem. And I know that in 2021, our government announced the action plan to protect them from firefighters from harmful chemicals, including banning harmful chemical flame retardants, supporting the development and use of safe flame retardants, etc. I am a firm believer that there is much more to do, and in collaboration, we can actually get things done. So I'm looking forward to working with a member across the aisle to make this a reality. Thank you.
Resuming debate, the Honourable Member for Jonquière. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I will be honest with you, Madam Speaker. Let us say that this bill puts me in a rather uncomfortable position. Why do I say that? Because I would like to challenge you to find someone who doesn't like firefighters. So from the get-go, I would like to say that the fact that the Bloc Québécois will not be supporting this particular bill does not mean that we do not recognise the diligent and essential work carried out by firefighters. Perhaps as an introduction, I would like to give a counter-example. Let us say that the Quebec government were to decide that military personnel do not have a strong enough framework from the federal government, then Quebec will say, well, I'm going to create my own framework for PTSD, my own standards for military personnel using chemical products. I'm sure that my colleagues in this House would be the first to indicate that national defence is actually not provincial, and they would be right. So I find myself in this situation, this uncomfortable situation of saying no to this bill that is a bit of a motherhood and apple pie bill. Motherhood and apple pie because everyone agrees that firefighters are good. My Liberal colleagues and my NDP colleagues are often prisoners of this temptation of centralisation. Will rapidly vote for this bill. Well, that's up to them. I don't know if my Conservative colleagues, who many times have said that they were defenders of various jurisdictions for Quebec and provinces, will vote with them. But for me, very clearly, this bill is direct intervention in provincial jurisdictions. So I must say that we will be voting against this particular bill. Everyone loves firefighters and no one loves cancer. Let's just say that the federal government is overstepping its jurisdiction with this bill. The Bloc is opposed to a national framework legislation that would dictate standards and practices to Quebec and municipalities. The Bloc believes that there is a need for more awareness, recognition of occupational diseases related to exposure to carcinogenic particles, and more research, but that it is not the federal government that will tell Quebec, provinces and municipalities what to do. They know what to do and how to do it in an area that concerns them. In addition, I would like to highlight to my colleague that Quebec has recently changed its practices and facilitated its CNESST access regime with provisions for occupational and oncological diseases. And so we in Quebec already have the institutions that are needed to respond to this issue. So the argument that I have for you is relatively simple. As we know, firefighting is not federally regulated. Municipal institutions in the provinces that govern firefighting are under the jurisdiction of Quebec and other provinces. In Quebec, it is the Ministry of Public Security that is responsible for fire safety. It is the Fire Safety Act that establishes good firefighting practices in Quebec. The Ministry of Public Security must, in amongst other things, set out the major orientations concerning prevention, training of personnel, preparation of interventions and rescue, must issue certificates of conformity for risk coverage plans, must coordinate the actions of government departments and agencies in the area of fire safety, must encourage its partners to show initiative in fire safety, must encourage the formation and training of associations active in fire safety, and contribute to informing citizens on fire prevention. So immediately we can see that everything that has to do with firefighting falls under provincial and Quebec government jurisdiction. Municipalities have responsibilities, similar responsibilities. I would like to quickly broach the issue of professional injuries. In Quebec, it's the CNESST that manages workplace issues. Through its laws and regulations, compensates workers who have been harmed in the workplace. Since April 2016, the CNESST recognizes 7 cancers in firefighters: kidney, bladder, larynx, lung, mesothelioma, multiple myeloma, and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So work has already been done in Quebec. Earlier, my colleague was notifying us that in Manitoba, more than 8 cancers are recognized. There are particularities. I don't know if there's a firefighter in the oil and gas industry. Perhaps there are different and increased risks. We have to keep that in mind. But it is not up to the federal government to act because they are not part of this jurisdiction. As a result of the CNESST changes, municipalities have changed their practices to protect workers from contaminants following many complaints. In short, in Quebec, they now require that equipment be decontaminated with a brush and water jet and then sealed. My colleague abundantly referred to equipment that is just simply left in cars. Now, it's no longer the case in Quebec. Decontaminated until cleaned, even if the equipment shows no apparent traces of contamination. This is an issue that has already been addressed by the CNESST. The Montreal Firefighters Association is campaigning to raise awareness of occupational cancers and is calling for more cancers to be recognized by the CNESST. This is work that must be done not here but in Quebec institutions. In short, this does not concern the federal government. In addition, several national associations, such as the Association des chefs en sécurité incendie du Québec or the Association paritaire pour la santé et la sécurité du travail, when it comes to municipal affairs, are conducting awareness campaigns among their members to reduce the risks associated with fire contaminants. So there is awareness that is being raised on the matter. We do not need a federal law to do so. According to Chris Ross, the challenge for Quebec is not the administrative recognition of the problem by the CNESST, but the proof for workers who suffer from cancer so that the worker does not have to demonstrate that his or her cancer is caused by his occupation, in addition to broadening the list of cancers recognized by Quebec. On the 30th of September 2021, the National Assembly adopted Bill 59, an act to modernize the occupational health and safety system. This bill included several amendments to facilitate access to the plan, including the creation of a scientific committee on occupational diseases. My colleague said that we need to study this matter because there may be other forms of cancer that could be better prepared against so that we better protect firefighters. While there are already provisions in Quebec, a scientific committee on occupational diseases, as I was saying, and the updating of the regulation respecting occupational diseases and the creation of a committee of oncological diseases. Madam Speaker, to finish, I would like to say, cancer is cancer. Everyone agrees. No one likes cancer. Cancer for a firefighter, cancer for someone who works in a place where they have to work with chemical products. A cancer is a cancer is a cancer. If we really want to address this issue of cancer, the best way to do so is to have a strong and robust healthcare system. As you know now, there are ridiculous delays caused by COVID, and the way to rectify this is perhaps by having access to a greater amount of resources. All interveners in the healthcare system say that there should be an increase of healthcare transfers to 35% of system costs. In the Journal de Montréal this morning, a letter signed by all healthcare unions, associations that are all asking for an increase of healthcare transfers to 35%. The federal government last week recognized that there was an issue. with regards to healthcare, a funding issue. They put $2 billion aside in order to try and rectify the waiting time issue. If they recognise that there is a problem, then the government must listen to all interveners, be they the Conference Board of Canada, the Parliamentary Budget Officer. It's not a Bloc East, as far as I know, the Parliamentary Budget Officer. They're all saying that the solution is to increase healthcare transfers to 35% to have a system that is viable in the long term, and maybe through that, we will be able to fight professional cancers much better. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Resuming debate, the honourable member for Essex.
Well, thank you so much, Madam Speaker, and it truly is an honour to stand here today. I'm going to do my best to get through this speech in support of Bill C-224. It really was a really remarkable weekend, an emotional weekend, diving into and having so many conversations with so many of my colleagues from the past. So thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Congratulations to the Member of Parliament, and I'm going to mess this up, from Longueuil, Charles Lemoyne. It's the best I can do, Madam Speaker, for bringing this bill forward. In fact, before yesterday, I never spoke to the member. And a quick phone call, you really find out just how quickly someone's personality is, where someone's heart's at, and how much we actually have alike, Madam Speaker. So through you to the member, congratulations, and I thank you very much for asking me to not only second this bill, but the opportunity to speak to this today. And so in preparation for this speech, it brought back a ton of memories. It should be the easiest speech for me to make today. And in fact, Madam Speaker, it's one of the toughest. And I guess the first thing I would say, Madam Speaker, is how the service of this House, how in serving the people of this House, is completely like the firefighters serving the people of their communities. In that when the firefighters run to put out a fire, Madam Speaker, so do the people of this House. And it's truly all about service and not about the job. Madam Speaker, I was a firefighter from 1995 to 2002. It's in my blood, badge number 70. And some of my fondest memories, Madam Speaker, were at the fire hall. And in fact, Madam Speaker, the day I was married, I was dropped off at the church in a fire truck. And I wore these very same dress blues, and I won't lie to this House and say that they haven't been taken out a little bit of the hips. But I will suggest, Madam Speaker, that I was surrounded by many of my colleagues at my wedding wearing their dress blues, and I couldn't be much more prouder to stand here today. And I wouldn't be standing here today if it weren't for some of the amazing folks that allowed me the opportunity to get there, Madam Speaker. And I need to acknowledge Chief Sunderland, who hired me, Deputy Chief Dawson, who was a role model, Station Captain Kratz, Station Captain Brando, Captain Rankin, Captain Alsop, Captain Carther, Captain Stannard, and Captain Bugazelli, along with the very many fire department friends, firefighters that I served with. I also want to, and would be remiss not to, thank the member for Caribou Prince George. His hard work, Madam Speaker, in the last Parliament, moving this bill forward, I really truly believe got it to where it is today. And so I thank him very much for all his dedication and hard work. And I also want to thank the member from Barrie Innisfil, who also was a firefighter, who helped give me an opportunity to speak to this. And of course, I have to acknowledge the IAFF, International Association of Firefighters, as they are in Ottawa this week for their conference. Madam Speaker, on just yesterday, I spoke to Chief Quinnell. He's the fire chief for Kingsville, Ontario. And I said, Chief, give me some thoughts. Talk to me about what's going on. And he said, Chris, firefighters are too proud to let others know when they are suffering. So oftentimes, specifically in the times of cancer, we find out about their passing afterwards. And how true is that? And what they really care about is to know that their family is taken care of after they're gone. The advocacy to let their families know that there is support and benefits for them after their death is vital. And he spoke specifically about the awareness. And very eloquently said by the member that introduced this bill, it's as simple as bunker gear. We as volunteers take our bunker gear home with us. We leave it in the back of our vehicle. And our kids put our fire helmets on and we wrap them up in our fire jackets, not even thinking about the carcinogens that may be in them. And so, you know, I guess at the end of the day, Madam Speaker, when I think about one specific fire that I was at with so many of my colleagues, it was a plastics fire. And the smoke was about here, and there was no wind. And it was stagnant there. And to suggest that a firefighter can wear SCBA, self-contained breathing apparatus, for hours on end fighting a fire is, well, quite frankly, not doable. So we understand as firefighters everything that comes with the job and the consequences that come with the job. But this bill will raise the awareness that Chief Quinnell spoke about from the very beginning. Madam Speaker, this is going to be a tough one for me, but I'm going to get through it. Firefighter Daryl Elwood. First and foremost, thank you to the family for allowing me to share this story. Daryl Elwood was a Kingsville Fire Department, was a Kingsville firefighter, and then went on to serve in the city of Windsor. Daryl lit up the room everywhere and anywhere he went. He lived at the fire hall with his wife, Kelly, who was the dispatcher. I remember many, many evenings sitting around what we call the Achilles, which is an inflatable boat, and him, long after the fire is done, and him making jokes and bringing us all to tears with his laughter and his smile. Madam Speaker, I spoke to his daughter, Jenny, on Saturday. It was emotional for me, and she was the tough one. But she said, "Dad will be with you when you speak. I know this. He has shown himself to our family since his passing. So, Daryl, if you're here, welcome to the House of Commons." In the fire department world, Madam Speaker, we have something called the right-hand rule or the left-hand rule. And when we open up a door, depending on which way the door opens, we follow the left hand and we follow the right hand, because the smoke's so thick and the fire is so hot, we don't want to lose our way. But with that rule, Madam Speaker, there's always a hand on the shoulder of the person behind you. I know Daryl's hand is on the shoulders of firefighters across North America and, quite frankly, the world today. He loved his job, Madam Speaker, but mostly he loved the people that he worked with. He was a passionate champion for health and safety, Jenny told me. Isn't that ironic? He passed away from multiple myeloma on Christmas Day, 2011, and was laid to rest on January 14th, 2012. He was young at the age of 50. I'll be 46 pretty soon, Madam Speaker. I keep that in perspective. His celebration of life brought firefighters from many departments to say goodbye. I know, because I was one of them. Ironically, Speaker, this bill also calls for January to be named Firefighter Cancer Awareness Month. Daryl left behind his parents, Bud and Marie. Bud and Marie, his wonderful wife, Kelly, and his children, Jenny, Ian, and Adam. His legacy lives on through them. I want to also thank the spouses of firefighters. Those spouses are our support. I'm running out of time, Madam Speaker. 3 last more thoughts. Jenny also told me on Saturday, when her father was asked, if you knew he would pass away at the age of 50, would you do this job again? And a very emphatic, simple answer was, yes. In closing, Madam Speaker, I want to recite the firefighter's prayer. When I'm called to duty, God, whenever flames may rage, give me the strength to save some life, whatever be its age. Help me to embrace a little child before it's too late, or some older person for the horror of that fate. Enable me to be alert and hear the weakest shout, and quickly and efficiently to put the fire out. I want to fill my calling and give the best in me, give you the best in me, to guard my neighbor and protect his property. And if according to your will, I have to lose my life, blessed be with your protecting hand, my children and my wife. To my brothers and sisters and their spouses or partners, we thank you, we respect you, we support you, we love you, and we salute you. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Resuming debate, the honourable member for Vancouver Kingsway.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank my honourable colleague from Essex who just spoke so passionately and powerfully before me. Thank you for sharing his experience and his service. It's a tough act to follow that. Madam Speaker, firefighters risk their lives every day to protect our communities. They have our backs when we need it most. And in turn, we have a responsibility to take care of Canada's firefighters. Cancer is an epidemic in Canada's fire service and by far the leading cause of line of duty death. New Democrats stand with firefighters in the battle to extinguish occupational cancer and, in fact, all occupational hazards that they face. We must take immediate action to reduce the risk of cancer for Canadian firefighters through improved awareness, prevention, screening, and treatment. And so this bill has our hearty support. Now, Bill C-224 provides for the development of a national framework designed to raise awareness of cancers linked to firefighting and to support improved access for firefighters to cancer prevention and treatment. And if I might at this moment just take a brief moment to comment on my Bloc Québécois colleagues' comments. Having a national framework is not only constitutional, but it's required in this country, as I'll point out, and there is no barrier whatsoever, nor should we as parliamentarians let any barrier get in the way of taking measures that save lives and protect firefighters. Of course, this bill also designates the month of January in each year as Firefighter Cancer Awareness Month. Now, the national framework does a number of things, but it must include measures to do the following: explain the link between firefighting and certain types of cancer, identify the training, education, and guidance needs of healthcare and other professionals related to the prevention and treatment of cancers linked to firefighting, provide for firefighters across Canada to be regularly screened for cancers linked to firefighting, promote research and improve data collection, promote information and knowledge sharing, and establish national standards to recognize cancers linked to firefighting as occupational diseases. Now, by way of background, Madam Speaker, occupational cancer is now the leading cause of death among firefighters. Firefighters, we know, are regularly exposed to concentrated carcinogens in the air, soot, and tar at a fire ground. A recent study from the University of the Fraser Valley, which drew on a decade of data from worker compensation boards, found that 86% of all firefighter workplace fatality claims were due to cancer, with an annual rate of a shocking 50 fatalities per 100,000 firefighters. Firefighters are killed by a cancer at a rate about 3 times higher than the general population, and cancer rates among firefighters increase dramatically with age, with the 35 to 39-year age group accounting for only 1% of workplace fatal cancer claims among firefighters, but the 60 to 64-year group accounting for 17%, while 65 and older make up nearly half the claims. Now, unfortunately, and this is why I think we need this bill so desperately, there's inconsistent recognition of occupational cancers across Canada. A firefighter's cancer may or may not be recognized as occupational, depending on the province or territory in which they live. According to the International Association of Firefighters Line of Duty Death Database, 408 Canadian IAFF members died in the line of duty as a result of occupational cancers during the 10-year period between 2012 and 2021. These were members whose cancers were formally accepted as job-related by their respective provincial workers' compensation boards, in most cases by presumptive legislation. But the true number of firefighter cancer deaths among Canadian firefighters during that time frame is no doubt higher, considering that not all provinces and territories formally recognize all the same cancer types as occupational among firefighters. Quebec recently enacted presumptive legislation for its firefighters, becoming the last province to do so, but it only recognizes 9 types of cancer as occupational, when we know that there are double that at least. Now, I want to take a moment to speak about what I consider to be the best firefighters unit in the country. That's the Vancouver Firefighters Union, IAFF Local 18. And I want to give a shout out to some of the finest Canadians I've had the pleasure to know and work with. These include Gord Ditchburn, Rob Weeks, Lee Lax, Chris Coleman, and Dustin Bordedy. These men are not only leaders in their workplace, they're not only some of the finest firefighters in the country, they're not only superb advocates and representatives of their firefighters as sisters and brothers in the labor movement, but they're just excellent human beings who give of themselves in every way, both in the community, in the workplace, and in the provincial legislature and House of Commons. And here's what they have explained to me over the years. As IAFF Local 18 has been a leader in the promotion and achievement of cancer presumption legislation here in British Columbia. Now I want to pause and say exactly what this legislation is. A presumption means if a professional or volunteer firefighter develops one of the listed cancers after a certain period of employment, it is presumed that the cancer arose from their employment. The firefighter is then eligible for workers' compensation benefits without having to provide evidence that the cancer is work-related, which can often be extraordinarily onerous and time-consuming, especially hard on a firefighter and their family at a time when they are battling cancer. Now, BC first recognized certain cancers as occupational diseases for firefighters in 2005, very much due to the leading work of Local 18. In 2017, the BC government moved forward with an amendment to the Firefighters Occupational Disease Regulation under the Workers' Compensation Act to add presumptions for breast cancer, prostate cancer, and multiple myeloma as occupational diseases for firefighters. At the time, cancer presumptions for firefighters were already recognized for the following: brain, bladder, colorectal, kidney, ureter, testicular, lung, esophageal, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and leukemia. In 2019, the BC NDP government introduced Bill 18 to extend presumptive conditions for forest firefighters, Indigenous firefighters, and fire inspectors, allowing them to more easily claim coverage for work-related illnesses like cancer, heart disease, and mental health disorders. Now, this is an example, Madam Speaker, of what labor and a very active and informed firefighters union working in concert with the government that is concerned about occupational health and safety can accomplish. And once again, this leading situation in British Columbia is not the reality for firefighters across this country. And that is why I think it is so critical that we provide a national framework to lead all provinces and territories to achieve the same kind of progress we're making in BC, recognizing, of course, that the job is not done even here. Now, I want to just shift for a moment to something that is a very practical step that we can and should be taking. The NDP caucus wrote a letter to the Minister of Environment and Health last year. And what this letter did was it expressed the IAFF's serious concerns over toxic chemical flame retardants in upholstered furniture and flammability testing standards for consumer products. Now, toxic chemicals are commonly used as flame retardants in a wide variety of household products, such as upholstered furniture. They threaten the environment, but more importantly, they affect the human body, causing numerous health problems, such as cancer. Firefighters are at a greater risk of harm from chemical flame retardants because they encounter them in a combusted state and accumulate higher levels of exposure over the course of their career. Now, the past chemicals management plan acknowledged the health risks posed by select chemical flame retardants and banned their manufacture, sale, import, and use. However, banning only certain classes of flame retardants opens the door to loopholes and only facilitates their continued use. Additionally, there are no regulations currently under the Canada Consumer Product Safety Act for residential upholstered furniture. This leaves the onus on industry to choose how to meet flammability requirements. The letter that we sent, generated by the IAFF Local 18, called for firefighters to be included in the classification of vulnerable populations when assessing chemical safety, called for regulatory and risk management initiatives involving chemical assessments, to consider occupational standards like fire and emergency services when evaluating chemical safety, called for the introduction of regulatory measures that will prevent industry from replacing toxic chemicals by other similar chemicals that are just as harmful, called for a complete ban on the sale, manufacturing, import, and use of all chemicals that are used in flame retardants for upholstered furniture, given the toxic effects they have, not just on firefighters, but all Canadians. And it calls on the federal government to investigate concerns about open flame testing while considering the merits of smolder resisting standards and include the IAFF on any future testing or chemical management consultations. Madam Speaker, let's pass this bill, but let's also protect firefighters by enacting protection against cancer-causing flame retardants immediately. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Resuming debate, the honourable member for Cloverdale-Langley City.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm pleased to participate in this important discussion on Bill C-224. I'd like to thank my honourable colleague, the member for Longueuil, Charles Lemoyne, for sponsoring this bill. And I'd like to thank all firefighters in Canada for serving our community, for risking their lives to keep us all safe. Firefighters face dangers and risk their lives to protect us and our communities. The hazards they face go beyond the brave and selfless act of running into burning buildings to save lives. Firefighters also put themselves in harm's way from exposure to toxic chemicals, such as certain harmful flame retardants in upholstered furniture, mattresses, and electronic devices, amongst others, when responding to fires. While the personal protective equipment firefighters wear offer a level of protection, exposure to these harmful chemicals, either through skin contact or inhalation, are known to increase the risk of certain types of cancers, lung disease, and to cause other adverse health effects. That is why last summer the government announced a comprehensive action plan to protect firefighters from harmful chemicals that are released during household fires. Today, Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to tell you about what the action plan is and the measures already underway to protect these first responders in their life-saving work, but also to speak about why I feel this framework is so important as we move forward in the protection of our firefighters. In the Government of Canada's Firefighter Action Plan, the plan aims to protect firefighters from harmful chemicals, with a particular focus on chemical flame retardants that are found in many household items, like upholstered furniture and electronics. Chemical flame retardants can save lives by slowing the ignition and spread of fire. However, they can also cause harmful health effects, like cancer or impaired fertility when burned and inhaled. The plan lays out 5 key areas of action. First, the government will prohibit harmful chemical flame retardants in Canada. To date, we have assessed over 150 flame retardants and has restricted or phased out those that are harmful to human health or the environment. 14 more chemical flame retardants are currently undergoing assessment, with even more to be assessed within the next 2 years to determine if they are harmful and require further actions. Prohibiting or restricting harmful chemical flame retardants can help minimize firefighters and other Canadians' exposure to these chemicals and their adverse health effects. And I'm really pleased to see the government has made this progress, because when I was on the Environment Committee, we had looked at this particular issue under the Canadian Environmental Protection Act, and it's good to see that work is happening, but more work needs to be done. Secondly, we're working with industry to promote the use of alternatives to chemical flame retardants that comply with fire safety standards. To support the move away from harmful flame retardants, the government has updated 5 industry guidance documents on flammability requirements in consumer products. These updated materials emphasize ways that industry can comply without using chemical flame retardants and encourage manufacturers to design products differently, such as using inherently flame-resistant materials like wool. Third, our government is working with universities and firefighters to advance research on the health effects of chemical flame retardants and to monitor firefighters' levels of exposure to harmful chemicals. Monitoring the levels of these chemicals in firefighters, combined with new research data, provides important information that will help regulators target harmful chemicals. We will continue to share results of this research and monitoring with the scientific community and with the international community of firefighters to advance broader efforts to protect firefighters. Fourth, we're going to use results of its research and monitoring to inform best practices for firefighters to help reduce their exposure to harmful chemicals. Our government has collaborated with universities and firefighters to research existing strategies, including personal protective equipment that reduces exposure to chemicals, to determine their effectiveness. This important work will help improve existing best practices and identify new measures that can be implemented at the local, national, and international levels. Finally, we'll continue to increase transparency and promote information sharing to raise awareness about the use of chemical flame retardants in products available to consumers. Empowering consumers to make informed choices can reduce exposure to harmful chemicals for Canadians, including firefighters. Our government is committed to enhancing supply chain transparency and strengthening mandatory labeling of consumer products. To this end, in March, the government launched a national consultation asking the public to help identify, develop, prioritize, and test innovative solutions for improving transparency about chemicals in products. This consultation will inform the government's future work on a broad strategy for labeling toxic chemicals in consumer products, including flame retardants and upholstered furniture. These strengthened measures and increased awareness will make a tangible impact for firefighters. This is particularly true in my community, where only 13 cancers in British Columbia are listed as work-related. Last week, I met with representatives from Surrey, Langley Township, and Langley City firefighters who either have or know a colleague who has suffered from an occupational cancer. Richard from Station 1271 in Surrey told me that in his 18-year career, he has seen 9 occupational diseases line-of-duty deaths. Of the 9, 6 have tragically lost their lives to occupational cancers, including Deputy Chief John Watt, Battalion Chiefs William Robertson and David Rivet, and Captains Patrick Glendinning, Randy Pittico, Leslie Dion. Most of these members all worked at the same fire hall for most of their career. Sadly, we know there will be more Surrey and Langley members added to this list annually. One thing has stayed with me since speaking with firefighters locally. Richard told me in the case of occupational cancers, the statement, "If it is on you, it is in you," and this has never been so true. Dan Gray from the city of Langley and Jordan Sparrow from the township also shared their insights and all shared the hope that this framework will move ahead to continue the national consistency in identifying cancers, occupational cancers across Canada. Madam Speaker, the government's action plan is a comprehensive approach to protecting firefighters from harmful chemicals released during household fires. Significant progress is being made in its implementation through banning harmful chemical flame retardants and supporting the development and use of safer alternatives. As part of the Firefighters Action Plan, the government is also conducting research and monitoring levels of exposure to chemicals and identifying practices that can protect our firefighter population from long-term harm. Lastly, the government is sharing information to help raise awareness about the presence of chemicals, including flame retardants, in consumer products. Madam Speaker, for all of these reasons, this is why the government has done so much work, and I think we need to be aware of the work that has happened, but there is more work that needs to be done, and that is why I so proudly stand here today in support of Bill C-224 and the work that we are doing to identify a national framework for firefighters. With that, Madam Chair, I am finished my intervention, and thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to this today.
Resuming debate, reprise de débat. We only have 2 minutes left for this debate. So the honourable member for Cariboo Prince George.
Madam Speaker, I've got 2 minutes. How do you sum up your support in 2 minutes? I'll defer my time for the next time that we get a chance to speak. This bill has to pass. We need to do more for our firefighters, for those who stand as our silent sentinels, for those who run into burning buildings, run towards danger each and every day and put their lives in jeopardy so that your family and mine can sleep safely, be safe, and be sound. Madam Speaker, I'll save the rest of my time for the next time that this bill is up. Thank you.
C'est quoi? On va juste entendre. Sorry about that. So the honourable member will have 9.5 minutes the next time that this matter is before the House. La période prévue pour les...
The time provided for the consideration of private members' business has now expired, and the order is dropped to the bottom of the order of precedence on the order paper.
Ordre du jour.
Orders of the